Dark Side of the Moon's success had propelled Pink Floyd to levels of fame and glory that the band had never ever seen before. Still remaining one of the most important albums of all time and also one of the best-selling, Dark Side of the Moon, of course, helped the band get a landmark amount of wealth, something that they'd certainly used. However, it was also a means to begin to unravel the band somewhat. You make a great album like that, people begin to change. The main change that occurred with their follow-up album, Wish You Were Here, was the increasing distance between Roger Waters and the remainder of the boys, especially whenever it came to composition. Wish You Were Here, like Dark Side of the Moon, was another conceptual release, and this is one that also touched base on the ideas of greed, but focused a little bit more on the corporate fat cats and everything like that, while also still touching base with the idea of Syd Barrett and the reminiscence of their friend. Shine On You Crazy Diamond is a two-part, 25-minute long opus that both acts as bookends of the album, the first track and the final track, and is probably one of the most memorable of these long tracks in this classic period, especially part one. There's the vocals that you hear, the words that you will hear be spoken by Roger on this track are memorable, mainly because if you listen carefully to the language, you can easily discern that he is speaking about Syd Barrett, using words such as diamond or prison, using words such as painter, all things that Syd Barrett truly was. An artist, a martyr, somebody who just became lost in the fold. The middle parts of the tracks, with tracks such as Have a Cigar and Welcome to the Machine, are really directly based and focused on the corporations and the companies that really control them all, and is directed, of course, toward the music business, kind of showing just how informal that the process really was and had started to become. Basically, if you were a cash cow, you were on everybody's guest list. However, barely anybody truly knew who you were, with the extent of a personal side, as opposed to what you've done career-wise. This is not to say that that's not really changed. However, it is also to say that it's a fitting metaphor for any business or corporate environment where, if you are productive and you go to a large company gathering, oftentimes you'll be recognized for what you've done as part of the corporation, as part of the company, as part of the store. However, as far as an individualistic or personal basis is concerned, none really exist. Wish You Were Here is an odd track. It's also one of the most memorable tracks. It's the one that you'll still hear on the radio to this day. The opening intro to this riff is absolutely timeless and 100% easily recognizable. This is another song that is mired in talk about Syd, and it's extremely personal. Overall, this is an album that was a fitting follow-up for Dark Side of the Moon. However, just like any other follow-up for a massive album such as this, it's not going to quite reach the same acclaim. Whenever you compare the two albums, Dark Side just seems to have a lot more of a concreteness to it with a free-flowing atmosphere. However, Wish You Were Here also maintains that value as well. However, you could tell that the compositions were mainly done by one man, as it all seems to really wrap around a certain style as far as the overall body of work is concerned. Now, whenever it comes to an actual variety on the album, there certainly are points where variety is easily seen, especially on the Shine On You Crazy Diamonds. These long affairs are really where the band Pink Floyd is able to showcase what they're able to do as a collective unit. Songs such as Welcome to the Machine is able to show you just how interesting that the band is able to take their usage of strange sound bites or synthesizers and kind of just take everything to the next level. Have a Cigar is almost a song that just is kind of quirky and funny. Something that you will hear on Pink Floyd tracks, but this one was an obvious direct attack that was done in a way that was very quirky, very humorous, kind of very expertly crafted. And I Wish You Were Here is obviously what it is. It's a track that is very heartbreaking, but at the same time really speaks to the glory of somebody. Overall, this album will be remembered as yet another classic, one of the most important albums of all time, as it's made many lists for said things. It's also very widely recognizable for its cover. Overall, this is an album that's going to be very high up on a personal list such as my own for the Pink Floyd discography. However, it's also an album that is not without some flaws, in the fact that the material does seem to be a little bit more singular as opposed to it being a full band effort. Shine On You Crazy Diamond Parts 1 and 2 will still for me maintain to be probably the strongest tracks, the ones that I enjoy the most, because it feels like there's a collective union to those songs as opposed to it being kind of distanced to just one man. However, the other tracks are no slouches either. This is certainly one that would reach a top 5 status, but it certainly isn't my favorite. But we don't have to go far to find that, because we're about to talk about it. Come on back. We're about to take a trip. We're about to talk about animals.